Hello, everyone. I'm here with Jason Holley, and we are connecting today to have a conversation about what Jason is doing with evolutionary astrology and what he has chosen to present at our upcoming online conference, the first week of October, October 6th through the 8th. So excited to have you joining us, Jason. He's been around for a while in this work, and so welcome. And I really look forward to this October to come together as a group again.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
So how long ago did we meet on the message board? That's where I first met you, and it wasn't like
Right.
it was probably
I
2010.
yeah, that's that. I'm almost certain that it was 2010 when we met. Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds right. Yep.
So how did you find evolutionary astrology? How did you find the Pluto books or anything that Jeffrey Wolf Green had put out on the planet? How did you discover it?
Yeah. Well, I think that it was right around that time. I mean, I grew up in astrology, in an astrology speaking family. My mother, her mother, her mother, her mother, we were all in the same house. So, I mean, this is called South Node in Cancer in the 12th house, right? I'm born into this matriarchal line, and my great great grandmother was a tea leaf reader, and all of them spoke astrology. Nobody was like a professional astrologer. And it was in West Virginia. So although there's a lot of things about that place that people probably have in their minds when I say that, one of the things that's very true in my experience is there is a kind of openness, to a lot of different things to understand the suffering that people are in. And there's also an embodied quality, like there's a connection with land there. And so I think that, so that was kind of the context for me with astrology came in from the beginning. And then really it was just after I became a therapist that I found the Pluto books, and then also found myself on the message board that we used to be in a great deal back then. I was really in it. And it the way I would say it is that when that material came, I felt like it was the place in the astrology world that really wanted to go the deepest, to really understand what are the deepest dynamics that are at play in oneself, in the world, in the soul. And it just immediately felt like that it was a community of people interested in that and of being of service to that. Those are the two things. Like it was like felt really, and I still feel this kinship with people who are attracted to or practice EA, where there's a very powerful, palpable drive to get to the heart of the matter, and also a very strong service orient. That's just what has risen around the work. It's just that's the vibe that I think it carries, and so it keeps me feeling a real connection. Like when you and Michelle and Ari reached out to me to mention this, it was like an immediate, like, oh yes, family reunion.
It does feel like a family reunion. Yeah.
So I really felt that vibe, and I think, especially being a therapist, it was like this is the astrology that will help me really grok or grasp the larger stories that my clients are inside.
That's incredible. I mean,
Uh,
there is so much depth that you can go, and as you evolve in this work, I know for myself that the more I've been through in my life and the more layers we pull back within our story, the readiness that we might feel to go to the next level, the next layer. I mean, we can't just see it all at once, right? We've got to be
yeah.
our own pace, slowly peeling back, turning those pages, ready to go deeper. There's a lot that anyone who gets into evolutionary astrology, whether someone wants a reading or is teaching it and has students that are coming forward, there's a readiness, I feel, for people. It's like they know they're gonna go someplace that might hurt or be uncomfortable for a while. But that's where the greatest reward is felt always. There's nothing like it. So it's been many years since the last time we were all together live. It's Still Meadow outside of, I think it was 2012. I don't know if I have the year correct, but it's been many years.
Sounds about right.
And it was instant family connection. we did really have a blast. And so we're hoping to reconnect that energy together. And I always like to observe in people how they take this work and evolve it. And before we went live today, I was checking in with you and wanting to know what you were doing. And back in the day, you were using evolutionary astrology with your clients in psychotherapy, right?
Yeah,
And
it was very much a part of the sessions, a ongoing context and ongoing language to make sense of things together. Yeah.
so would you always get people's birth information, like when you had a new client come in? Would that be part of it?
I mean, like, one didn't always use an intake form, but it was on the form, right? Birth data, including time, and then really to say to them, the reason I'm asking is this. And not everybody was, well, to be honest, I really can't think of anyone who was like, I don't want to hear about my chart, or no, like, and then over time, as I became known for astrology, then everybody came in already kind of knowing that that's what would happen. But even at the beginning, people who were in, religious worldviews that would not support, astrology or notions of reincarnation, or, even they, though, there was that, the way I always feel it is like, some animal in the sky, or some creature in the sky, some creature in the psyche, some part of self carrying, deeper knowledge than what they've been in this time, would be curious enough to sort of say, tell me more. Like, there's a little window. And so the chart is like that, right? It's this little window into more. And like you said when we were chatting before, like, or I guess you just said it, we're ready for as much as we're ready for, so it wasn't like a galumph of here's a bunch of information.
That would be a lot.
It was right. It was very much just, okay, you're in this situation in life today. How might it be mirrored in past life situations, or how might it be mirrored by what we can see in the chart, and what might be the evolutionary opportunity here? What is the meaning of this suffering? Because and that's the thing. I think that's why, again, that's with the EA. I feel a very strong interest in our community of helping with suffering and helping people grow and evolve, and it's not what I always feel with the approaches to astrology. Like, it varies. There's lots of good people doing lots of good things, but I will say, I think there's just a baseline service orientation in this that I felt in the people that really felt like that's the work I'm doing. I mean, psychotherapy means soul is the Greek word for psyche, is one of the Greek words for soul, and therapia means to wait upon, or to attend to, and sometimes to heal. But it's so it's literally about healing the soul, or about waiting. I even like that language of waiting upon the soul, like attending to. So so it was just a really natural lens, right, for that, for deep work. Yeah.
Well, there is so much suffering everywhere on this planet. I'm sure there's always been when we look back in history, but for that to be a focus, I can't think of a better body of work to be able to help people objectify why they are suffering, right? Why they have arrived at this place, and how do we move through that? So you've grown in your own on a natural path. You've expanded out of that concentrated psychotherapy practice. You're doing all sorts of cool things now. Can you just share a little bit about what you're doing? And I know you use this work in all that you do, but you've really expanded your reach and the way that you reach people. So you're helping them reconnect with their nature and in nature, it feels like.
Beautiful. I like the way you just said that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, because for me, it's really is that thing of, the astrology immediately, like, as soon as you look at a sky, or at a chart that, shows a sky, you immediately see the reality of multiplicity, right? Like that we are many things, we are many beings, or from the mythic perspective, we have many different gods and goddesses whose stories we are inside of, or we have many soul fragments, or places carrying information. so there's just the minyness of ourselves, like our internal ecosystem, but then there's also the relatedness to the world around us and to a vibrant world of consciousness. And to me, it's just what you said, connecting to their nature and to nature, and in nature, being embedded in our relations, all of our relations. And so so the work that I'm doing nowadays, though, I don't do, long-term, one-on-one psychotherapy anymore. I do help other therapists who want to work with, bringing all of this into their therapeutic practice, since I did that for a long time. But the main things that I'm up to now, I do a lot of I'm still playing with words that feel like they can hold what I'm doing, but immersive, experiential, embodied, relational, those kinds of words. And the practices are things like, having retreats or workshops where people, do astrodrama. So meaning, I have Saturn square the moon. I don't, but let's say I did. Sometimes it feels like it. and we all have it, every 14 years or so, right? So one person might play the Saturn, one person might play the moon, and really it's a way of letting the symbols speak rather than speaking to them or about them. It's like speaking to them and as them, and really feeling like in your body, what does Saturn square the moon feel like? When can I notice when I'm inside that pattern? And then, how can I use, evolutionary astrology, for instance, to like say, oh, what past life complex am I in, right? Or what sort of, where have I been drawn in? And what's the invitation here? Like how else could Saturn and Moon experience each other? And what's so amazing in the field that we set up for this type of work is that Saturn and Moon will usually show up in the complexed way, where they're more in the hijacked mode or, kind of possessed by the earlier dynamics. But often in the field, other ways of relating, creative ways of working and evolving the dynamic will kind of just emerge, like versus the astrologer saying, oh, here's how it could change, or here's what needs to happen. The field speaks, the planets speak. And so astrodrama like that, art making, I do a lot where people make art of their placements. And then, of course, when you look at the art, it's never just what you meant to draw, right? You always see things. You get to see more or other people look at it and say, oh, you drew them holding hands, but they don't look like they want to be holding it, or something. And you're, just, it gives you a lot of ways in, or even writing and writing prompts like left hand, right handing, where you can kind of access deeper unconscious patterns with the non-dominant hand. All that kind of thing. I do a lot with mythology. And for me, the purpose of sharing the mythology is to get a more creative sense of the story that you're in, and also feel how it links to the stories that humans have been in all along. And so there's a lot of storytelling. So that's the main thing I do, is this sort of experiential work. And then, I do a lot of mentorship with astrologers and groups online and, different stuff, but it's all, so it's really moved from, the one-on-one, which I'll still do consultation here and there, but mostly it has moved to groups and teaching and learning together, because I learn so much when I watch those I'm also being fed so much.
Definitely. I still learn when I do readings, and stuff.
Yeah, well, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of course, I'll always be learning through other people's experiences and stories. And one of the things that I love so much about the astro drama, how you speak about that or talk about it, someone can hear about dynamics within their life, or they can even feel it. But when you're acting out these aspects, these planetary configurations, it moves energy. So it's taking the emotion within you and you're acting it out, you're moving, you're playing a part. And one of the most challenging things, at least from my experience, in evolving, is being able to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You drop into the Cancer archetype, and to act out an astrodrama. You are on stage, you're in front of people, you are putting yourself out there, you are making yourself vulnerable. Even if you are acting somebody else's story out, likely it's a part of your own. So we have to find our way into the water, Jason, right? Right? We have to find our way in. And I always say, you don't swim with your clothes on. So you got to get in there and allow yourself to be vulnerable with this work. So I love the way that you've evolved your journey with all of your gifts. And and you talked about suffering, and I can't think of a symbol that represents suffering more than Chiron. Of course, we can make a story for many of them in combination, but Chiron does, for sure. People think of it as a wound. So you've chosen this topic for our conference coming up in October, and I know you've maybe already gone through your Chiron return this year. Is that?
No, I'm right inside of it. Yeah,
Today?
I had the first hit, because it's so slow in Aries, that for those of us with it in Aries, we get I think this will go, or I know this will go on until the end of almost beginning of 25 for me, 2025. There'll
Really?
be hit retrograde, kind of like when Pluto takes 2 years on something. So I'm very much in it. That's part of, that's definitely a big part of why I was drawn to, to share on Chiron, because again, it feels like, there's one level of talking about something, but there's also a level of talking from it and to it, like evoking it. So just the whole field that I am in, bodily, emotionally, energetically, it's so chirotic. Like one of my things going on right now is that I have suddenly had, it started when Jupiter was conjuncting my Mars a couple months ago, which of course rules the Chiron and Aries, and suddenly I got this massive boil on my face, like huge, like it was medieval. It was so like holy.
Oh my
guacamole,
gosh.
Oh, and then it's continued. Like so I had to, so with the boil, it taught me a lot of Chiron right there, because it was like, it's super interesting just from, I don't know, wound to the head, of course, Chiron and Aries, but it, it was like inflammation, and and I had to do all this, to care for it. You kind of have to like put a warm compress every day, 4 times a day. And so I would say to my partner, like, oh, excuse me, I have to tend my boil. But it actually had this really interesting effect, because sometimes Chiron and sixth house have some things in common, and the sixth, sometimes people, it's hard to see the connections between the associations, but about like routine and illness. But what I was saying was like illness created routine. It immediately meant that my whole day was structured by the need to tend and do self-care. Like that was required. And it was not a thing where you go in and attack it and try to change it. That's not Chiron wound, right? Like that's other types of wound, but it's more just like learn how to be with the boil and care for it. But then it has continued. I began to get all these outbreaks. I never had acne as a child or anything, but I've had all these things. And in fact, it looks to me like the skin where the first one was, and there's more.
I can't see anything. I don't know.
No, they've kind of settled down a little, but the skin where the first one was will not look like regular. Scar is probably too dramatic of a word, but I find that I'm like, yeah, I kind of want it to stay. It almost feels like the Chiron initiation, like because it's like a scar. We carry these, and they don't mean that somehow, oh, it's I'm always doomed to suffer. The kinds of things we can get into when Chiron is loud in our psyche, like, oh, to me it feels more like, no, you're marked as someone who knows suffering. You're carrying a wound, but it's the relationship to the wound is different. And so that's just one way that my body is in this. There's so much going on with it, but that one really is alive to me. And I just have been in this inquiry with Chiron, and even what we were referring to earlier in my work evolution, because it's a 10th house Chiron, and in my work evolution, 10th and 10th, 11th, like it's right there, and I feel both of those. But in that process, I feel like I've been in the Chiron side of the archetype that's a lot about like healing, right? But Chiron also has this mentoring, teaching piece, and I've really felt a focus towards that other. Of course, you're always doing both, right? Like they're not really separate, but the mode is different. And I always felt like I was like Chiron, in the cave at the bottom of Mount Pelion, and people will have to find me in the cave. I never do social media. I don't do all that stuff. Like, if you can find your way through the brambles, we'll do some really cool stuff.
Oh, good.
But now I have become like, it's okay to build a little stone path to the cave. It's like, let people know.
Don't make it so hard for them to get to you.
Honestly, yeah, with a wall of pretty words and my website, which is very hard to like, where is the person behind all these words? So anyway, that's another way it's really been alive for me, is like, and of course, yeah, my work has been wound work with people. That's what I've been doing. So it's been a lifelong mentorship with that place.
I have a question. Did you say you had Jupiter on your Mars when that happened?
Yeah, I have a Taurus Mars,
Okay.
and it's at 8 Taurus, and so yeah, the initial mass, just felt so big inflammation, like Jupiter, like, and
It's so literal. It became so literal because, I mean, Jupiter expands anything it touches, right? And so many of my, at least people come to me when they hear Jupiter, they think it's going to be the happy planet forever. It's just, it can be so, can be so not that. If you're headed in a direction that needs to be changed, or we will be notified, right? So
yeah, right. And the literal is when it really has you haven't picked it up at other levels, and it's like to me, the literal is the moment where it's like trying to become undeniable.
okay.
Like when Jeffrey speaks about Pluto and the necessity of cataclysm, when that's often what we need in order to say, hey, something's going on here,
Right.
and there's no denying it anymore. I mean, I remember that really spoke to me because I have Pluto square the nodes. I have Sun Pluto square the nodes, and that whole dynamic of a deep passion to evolve, but also a very deep resistance, and like, trying to sort of skip that over. And so, yeah, I've come to think of when things get that loud and that literal, it's like, okay, it's really an invitation, right? The symptom is a symbol, it's an invitation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's still a mystery to me. I can't say I feel like, oh, now I understand what this is all about.
That was my next question. It really was my next question.
Oh, yeah, no, I feel like I'm pretty patient with these. Like I try not to rush in to figure it out, because I'm really trusting, like, back to what you said at the beginning, like, the psyche we're ready to know what we're ready to know, and there's a wisdom to hanging out with it versus trying to control it and fix it. It's like, I want to hear from it. Like, what are you saying to me?
Right.
Who's trying to speak through my face right now, or through my, these
That's so true.
wounds.
So Pluto, cataclysm, we all experience cataclysms at one point in our life, even just losing a loved one that's in an aging process, dying process. I mean, we all go through it. Some people more Plutonian experiences than others. But you have Pluto squaring the nodes.
Yeah.
And yes, Jeffrey taught that cataclysms occur because of karmic reasons or resistance to change, right? Typically, or there's slow progressive change where evolution can occur, but that's not cataclysm typically. So I'm sure one of the questions that you've asked yourself, because you recognize there's resistance at times, right? Where is the resistance, right? With this thing on my face. And because it's so, I think of skin, everything we press is Saturn, it's wrapping, it's holding our emotion in, and the Aries, everything's trying to move up too sometimes and out the top of our head. So my question to you is, because we were taught also that you can't take one symbol in a chart and see everything, right? You look at the paradigm, the asteroids in particular, even Chiron and some of these other asteroids that we all love to work with are really like another instrument in the symphony, another actor on the play. And they can definitely stand out in a big way through a transit. But is there another transit, a Pluto transit in your chart in combination with this Chiron? Is there something else working with that?
Well, much of what you've said is really intuitively reflected in my chart. You know, one being the Saturn role, you know, as you said, with skin and boundary, and Saturn is also part of that dynamic I described. So, you know, Pluto, Sun, square the nodes, and then Saturn's right on the south node in the ascendant. So I've often felt that that really shows the picture of, you know, that Saturn and the various experiences in this life and other lives of trying to contain and, you know, hold and control. That's that volcano at the root of the chart down there. And like, no. Of course, you know, what does that do? You plug all the ways the lava is going to come out. It's coming out.
Oh my gosh.
So that is the natal. And then with regard to the Pluto transit, the one that comes to my mind right now, that's just really warming up, but that I very much feel is going on, is that Pluto is going to be trining my Jupiter. I have a 2-degree in Aquarius Jupiter, and it already, you know, when it was in Aquarius, to me, that's operational, even at the end of Capricorn. And so for me, what I'm feeling is there's a really strong actual need to claim the teachership of things, you know, and also the innovation of what I'm doing, and like Aquarius Jupiter. 8th house, it's deeper. And I've been really shy of that, right? I have 12th house South Node in Cancer, and I'm 4th house Sun, and I'm very like the only reason anyone knows who I am is because like different conferences, platforms, EA, all of it, those people said, here's Jason. Like Jason never has said, here's Jason. You know, like, and really had all these like, and then you know how once you are in a pattern that you haven't yet become really aware of and changed, from inside the pattern, you don't recognize this is my defensiveness. You start creating a whole ideology of why this is the way to be, right? Like, so I have a whole philosophy of like, oh, this, you know, what I'm doing is the right spiritual choice, and I should be, you know, and you know, and I think that I'm being challenged and really strongly to like, no, open that up and come from that place. And but I tend to overlook trines, right? I tend to be like, oh, show me the hard shit, you know, like, and in my own chart, the Pluto Sun trine Jupiter, it's almost like it's invisible to me sometimes. I don't really recognize that, when really it could be a really great resource. You know, in EA, we speak about trines as the opportunity for awareness and consciousness, right? Like, and so the Pluto coming to the Jupiter, trining the Sun Pluto natally,
that's
that
powerful.
feels like the context. Yeah.
So what I see with
exciting.
Pluto can exactly hold on for dear life. All that protection, the manhole covers coming off. But yeah, the Pluto Jupiter conjunction, when I think of that too, because Jupiter co-rules the second chakra with Neptune. And that's the very vulnerable part of that's the next chakra up, right? So the Pluto's ruling your root chakra. You've got Uranus in the middle layer, Saturn around that. And so this, all that you've been doing to protect the central, the deepest source of power within you to teach and reach people, right? In an innovative way, not afraid to die for it this time, or to, you know, to be raked over the coals or something crazy to happen. But it is a place that you now must enter, of course. And Jupiter is your truth. It's your nature. You know, it's what makes you feel naturally free to be your own vibrational nature without anything wrapped around it. So I feel like when Pluto comes over that Jupiter, it will be an opportunity to remove everything that's in the way. And, you know, your whole signal is going to change. It's going to get louder, you know, vibrationally and everything else. And I love that they're all in water houses, because that is the way that you do reach people, with your compassion, sensitivity, even your ability to laugh at yourself, your ability to laugh at your own trauma with the Jupiter and Aquarius in the 8th. I mean, you do, and it makes
That's a good
it makes
point.
you so relatable, Jason. It just does. It's like, he knows how I feel. He knows how I feel. So I love that so much about you.
Thank you.
So we know that you're in this Chiron journey, and it makes it so natural and effortless, really, to talk about how you feel about it, so you can help other people understand their Chiron return or what this archetype means for them. So tell us, I don't want you to give it all away, but what's your lecture about a bit?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I titled it, Chiron and the compost bin,
It's very funny. Jupiter, see, you're always making it. You are.
Because in part, what I feel like a lot of times with the wound, or with that, the sticky quality of it, there's something though about that, with trash, with garbage, with things we want to get rid of, and there's often a notion of getting rid of that's like, but people use words like clean and clear and, all of those types of things. And that's one way to look at it. But a Chiron way is probably more, the junk that you're getting rid of can be transmuted to something healing, right? Like Chiron is the wound and it is the healing. It's both. It's the alchemy of that in some way. And so really that patient tending of the wound really lets its medicine come. And kind of like what I'm saying with the face, it's like, if I'm patiently tending it, while I'm doing that, I also get information of what is this, what else is this, what else, who am I caring for here, right? And so it's that compost imagery for me. I just think there's so much in the world that needs to be composted, right? There's belief systems that really need to be composted, right? A lot of the mythology that I work with so passionately, but a lot of that mythology, or all of it, is riddled with patriarchal stuff all through it, right? I mean, whenever I teach it, I always have to like back up 3 steps and say, okay, first we got to remember where these Greeks were when they were telling all these stories, and that they were all men and they were all able to write, which means they were super duper privileged. Like, so we got to get underneath all of that stuff. And then we can still see, though, that even from their position, they could see into the myth, they could see into it, but only in a limited way. And so it's the more we can compost the stuff that doesn't serve, and to me, it's a very personal woundedness. And like you said, vulnerability, like there's something, about vulnerability with Chiron that is the alchemizer from the wound to the medicine, that willingness to feel it, to heal it, as they used to say, to really, like, there's something about Chiron that insists that you're going to have to feel it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you don't get any quick solution, and the other thing, I don't want to, it's like, it's also kind of Chiron, the mythology, in mythology, Chiron, was wounded in the leg and basically lived with a limp, and yet he was of service to everyone else, right? He was able to give medicine to all the others. And so there's also this thing of living with, your own imperfections, living with your own wounds, and without this, like, idea that we're supposed to be done. It's how do you live with it and live creatively with it. And so the kinds of stories that I'll share from people's charts and this is as much as they're getting of me.
Okay. I love it. I can't wait till you can show this, the stories with the chart and the Chiron, how that plays out. I remember when I first discovered that my Chiron was exactly conjunct my Pluto polarity point.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
In Pisces.
Okay.
Right, in the
Right.
ninth house.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah.
really this whole story, and you can see it other places, but lifetimes of hiding, right? Just petrified to just be my honest, authentic self, what will happen. So, but I remember early on seeing that and saying, okay, I've already got these skip steps happening and everything else. Now Chiron's parked on the door that I want to go through. It was hard enough dealing with the Saturn skip step. I was just talking to Laura about skip steps the other day. And so, but yeah, it is another very powerful symbol to re-emphasize the need to to feel everything, to feel it all the way through, to not avoid. You can't escape this
Yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah, and especially across from Pluto. Yeah,
You're like,
it's
maybe
like,
another one you'll get. Yeah. Another
yeah,
case study for Jason, but no.
yeah, right, right. Yeah, I mean that's the beauty though too, is that we can't escape. That's great, right? I mean it's horrible, we need to feel that, but there, and it's so funny because when you said something, you said, great, there's Chiron at the door I'm trying to go through. And I was thinking how the glyph of Chiron, if you turn it on its side, it looks like a skeleton key, like a key.
Yeah, a key.
And Chiron's like this key, and the question is how to experience that, right? Like how do we get access to whatever that key will unlock? And to me, again, it's vulnerability. It's really being in it, and being in it without forming lots of story around it. Like one of
Yeah.
the things I really admire about Chiron from the myth is, he had a wound and that was that. Like, so he was neither in denial of his wound, but he also didn't become defined by his wound.
Hmm.
It's like there's a relationship that's an ongoing. That's part of why, yeah, I don't have a like full notion of the story of this and don't think I need it, because in a way that lets it keep speaking to me, that lets it keep giving me medicine, and I don't have to figure anything out. I have to feel it out. And of
Right.
course I'm speaking from my way in the world. We all do this differently, but mine's pretty emotional. So uh, but I have found that has helped me to work with people with Chiron, because they, as you said, they feel met in um, that place of genuine suffering, where
Mm.
even picking up psychology words like trauma and PTSD, all of which can be useful stories, but they can all also become identities and prisons. The
Oh,
stories
totally.
can liberate you or they can imprison you, right?
That's
And
true.
astrology can do that. Like, you can use it in a way that narrows your way of seeing your life, or one that really opens you up. And so I think that's part of the Chiron. So it'll be in that way. The main thing I'll share a little bit with the myth, but it won't really be focused in the myth. It will be much more in the dynamics that we. I mean, you're always in myth and you're always in the dynamics, but it's like they don't go anywhere. But the focus, will be really looking at Chiron in the context of people's own evolutionary journeys.
Awesome.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, the body doesn't lie, but it sure speaks to us, right? That is so Chiron.
Right. Yeah. Perfect.
There's this,
Totally. Yeah. It
there's
really
a
is.
great quote. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Women Who Run with the Wolves, in her book.
Mm,
There's a chapter, it's 13, Battle
mhm,
Wounds. And she
mm, mm.
says, like with changes of the weather, a wound can ache again. Like when you break a bone,
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. I mean,
okay?
yeah, and true. Yeah.
Right? So with changes of the weather, the wound can ache again. But it's
Mm,
important to remember that in tensile strength, a scar is tougher than skin.
mm, mm,
He
mm,
said, I
mm,
kind of want that scar, it's just
yeah,
like, it's like
exactly.
your badge of
Right.
honor. I've been doing the
Yeah.
work.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
just love that, to not be afraid of what is left from the work, right?
Yeah.
And we
Right.
are stronger for walking through the fire. We are stronger for just standing in it, as long as we can be in it and take
Yeah.
breaks when we need to. I mean, just be compassionate with ourselves.
Mm,
But the other thing too is that you and me and anyone else, we're all created uniquely. And we were told with this work that the soul is like a fingerprint. No two are
mm,
alike,
mm,
right?
mm,
So it's our responsibility, really, and our real our sincere desires at the core, to just be who we are naturally, to not have to
mhm,
apologize for it, or
mhm,
and so
mhm,
that's where the real freedom lives. But the only way to get back to our true nature is through the swamp, his through tending to the wounds and finding out why they're there and where's the medicine. So
and loving those places in ourselves that struggle with those. It's that, like for me, in a way, as I've been in this transition, with professionally, it's like one of the things I really had to ask is, what is the reason I'm doing it? What am I up to? And of course, there's no final answer for that, for me at least. But love is the real one that speaks the most to me. Like, how do we come to love, all these places in ourselves, including the stinking wound, right? Like the Chiron, like the putrid smelling, it's like, because again, if we use the compost metaphor, that will become life, right? That'll feed life, that'll feed a flourishing, like
Incredible metaphor.
it's amazing. I mean, I was just in the Pecos Wilderness on Sunday, this amazing place that not a lot of people walk in, really. And one of the things that one of my friends kept drawing attention to was all the dying tree, or the trees not dying, just dying naturally as part of their life cycle in the forest, and lightning struck ones, and just all these different processes of decay that were underway. And yet decay is giving of life.
Yeah.
Like they're giving of them, and it actually reconnects them, to that which gave them birth. And
Right.
so there's something in that, right? That like engaging that, appreciating that, loving that.
And
Because
recognizing.
all of the little creatures need it. Yeah, recognizing it. Right. Yeah, exactly. Because I was kind of, that wasn't where my attention was that particular moment. But every time he would do that, it was like, it felt like it really was life affirming to acknowledge the decay, the wound. Yeah, it's life affirming. It
Yeah.
more life, more connection came out of it. Yeah.
So bringing everything full circle, and bring it full circle to love. A return to love, which is Pisces, the polarity of that sixth house. And ultimately, when we are trying to heal these wounds, we're trying to return to ourselves, the wholeness within us, and thus our holiness, and to that which created us, which is love. It is pure. And so, yeah, to endure, to appreciate, to be patient on the journey, to be patient, to take the time necessary.
Patience a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why this transit's so darn long, right?
Right. I think he drags his feet in Aries because Aries is so like, let's do it. And
Oh,
then
that makes sense,
Chiron,
right?
I never thought about that before, but just talking about you right now, I'm like, oh yeah, you gotta. It's a good. It's not necessarily the first thing of Aries to slow down, but
No.
Chiron, Chiron has a limp. If he runs, he's gonna fall. Right? Like it's not gonna work that way. And so, so it's really. So yeah, that's the general field of it.
Okay.
The
I love it. I
that
love it.
node. Yeah.
So I think between now and the time of the conference, you're going to have some more stories to tell us.
And I have a feeling.
I think some more Chiron stories, and you will be telling us. And we look so forward to sharing a space with you and to reconnecting as a community. And I just appreciate you so much and love the work you're doing for others. It is a karma yoga. You are a soul in service, a beautiful soul in service. So thank you for that, Jason, and for sharing some space with me today, and for being part of the Evolutionary Astrology community. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. No, I'm really excited to be there and be here. Yeah.
All right. Until October. Namaste.
Okay.